Military dogs do not panic for no reason, especially not the ones trained to save lives. Nobody in the parking lot understood that truth. The morning ranger stepped in front of a school bus and refused to move. Snow drifted softly through the small Colorado town like winter had not quite decided whether it wanted to stay or leave. Frost still covered the sidewalks near Pine Creek Elementary, and parents stood wrapped in heavy coats, holding steaming coffee, while children hurried toward warm classrooms beneath pale gray skies. It looked like any ordinary school morning, until the old German shepherd planted himself in the middle of the drop-off lane and growled low enough for only one man to understand something was wrong. Caleb Foster stood frozen beside the leash, cold air curling around him, while Ranger stared hard toward the school entrance with ears raised higher than usual. Not barking, not aggressive, focused, alert. The kind of alert Caleb remembered too well. Easy, Caleb muttered softly, crouching beside him. Talk to me, buddy. Ranger did not even look at him. That bothered Caleb more than the growling, because military dogs did not waste energy unless something mattered. 8 years serving overseas beside Ranger had taught him that much. The old dog shifted slightly forward, muscles tense beneath aging fur. Amber eyes locked somewhere past the school entrance toward the gymnasium building farther behind the playground. Then came the bus, bright yellow against the gray winter morning, brakes hissing softly as it turned into the drop-off lane. Before Caleb could react, Ranger moved. Not fast anymore. Age had stolen speed, but purpose remained. The German shepherd stepped directly into the lane, body stiff, refusing to back away. The bus stopped hard several feet ahead, while confused children pressed faces against the windows. "Sir," the driver shouted through the glass. "Can you move your dog?" Parents turned immediately. Conversation stopped. A woman holding a little girl stepped backward instinctively. Another parent muttered something about dangerous dogs near schools. Caleb tightened his jaw quietly. Same look again. Same uncomfortable suspicion he had seen too many times since leaving the military. Like pain made people nervous when they could not understand it. "Ranger," Caleb said carefully. "Heel." Nothing. The dog remained still, eyes fixed toward the school. Then something stranger happened. Ranger let out one low sound deep in his throat. Not anger. Not fear. Warning. Caleb felt it immediately because he had heard that sound before. Desert roads. Temporary camps. Places where danger arrived quietly before anyone else noticed it. He looked toward the school building again. Nothing unusual. Teachers greeting students. Custodians salting icy sidewalks. Kids laughing. Completely normal. Yet Ranger had never reacted like this before. Not once in retirement. Not in 8 years. "Come on," Caleb whispered softly, gently pulling the leash. Ranger resisted. Not hard. Just enough. Like leaving felt wrong. "Sir," the bus driver repeated louder now. "People are trying to get through." Embarrassment settled hard in Caleb's chest. He finally stepped closer and crouched beside Ranger again, one gloved hand resting against thick black and tan fur. "You are scaring people." Ranger blinked once, but still refused to move. Strange thing about old military dogs was how hard it became to ignore instinct after surviving enough dangerous places together. Caleb had trusted this dog with his life more times than he could count. Trusted him more than most people, if he was being honest. Yet standing outside an elementary school parking lot, while parents stared like he had lost his mind, made doubt arrive quicker than pride. Finally, after several long seconds, Ranger stepped aside. Slow, reluctant, still watching the building. Caleb apologized quietly to the bus driver before guiding him toward the sidewalk near the parking area. Whispered conversations followed immediately. "That dog should not be here. Looks unstable. Did you hear it growling?" Caleb kept walking like he had not heard any of it. Ranger stayed close now, but moved differently than usual. Head turning back toward the school repeatedly. Watching. Always watching. They reached the edge of the football field trail, where Caleb usually took morning walks after grabbing coffee downtown. Yet Ranger stopped again. Completely still. Snow drifted lightly against his fur while cold wind moved across the empty field. His attention never left the school. Caleb sighed quietly. "What are you trying to tell me?" No answer, obviously. Just those intelligent amber eyes fixed on something invisible to everyone else. Caleb had lived quietly outside town for nearly 4 years now. Small cabin. Few conversations. Routine simple enough to keep old memories manageable. Ranger had become calmer after retirement too. Older, slower, more interested in fireplaces than problems. But this morning felt different somehow. Wrong, maybe. Like something beneath ordinary life had shifted quietly overnight. Far behind them, the school bell rang through cold air. Children hurried inside. Teachers waved students forward. Life moved normally again. Yet Ranger still stood facing Pine Creek Elementary like he had forgotten how to leave. And for reasons Caleb could not explain yet, he suddenly found himself hoping the old dog was finally wrong about something. The rest of the morning never settled properly inside Caleb Foster's mind. Even after leaving Pine Creek Elementary behind, even after snow softened beneath weak Colorado sunlight, Ranger remained strangely distant. Not physically distant. The old German Shepherd stayed close beside Caleb along the walking trail that curved near frozen soccer fields and quiet neighborhoods. But mentally, something felt different. Ranger kept stopping, watching, listening. Every few minutes, his ears lifted sharply toward the school as though waiting for something nobody else noticed. Caleb had seen that behavior before. Years ago, places overseas where instinct mattered more than comfort. Places where Ranger noticed danger before radios ever confirmed it. Yet this was Colorado. Small town life. School buses. Bake sales. Children with backpacks too big for their shoulders. Nothing dangerous belonged here. At least that was what Caleb wanted to believe. By late afternoon, snow had slowed enough for Pine Creek Elementary to begin preparing for its annual winter fundraiser. Families arrived carrying casseroles, decorations, and folding chairs while children ran through parking lots wrapped in oversized coats. The school gymnasium buzzed with ordinary noise. Teachers laughing, parents chatting, basketballs echoing faintly from somewhere inside. Caleb almost skipped it altogether. He rarely joined town events anymore. For years, living quietly outside town had made isolation easier than awkward conversations. But Miss Eleanor Briggs, the librarian who somehow remembered everybody's birthday, had insisted earlier that week. "You cannot disappear forever, Caleb," she told him kindly. "Small towns heal lonely people if they let them." So sometime around 5:30, Caleb parked his old truck near the school parking lot, with Ranger resting quietly in the passenger seat. Snow still covered patches of pavement beneath flickering streetlights. "Just an hour," Caleb muttered softly. "Then we leave." Ranger did not move. That bothered Caleb immediately. Usually the dog enjoyed short outings, even now in older age. But tonight, the moment Pine Creek Elementary appeared through the windshield, Ranger stiffened again. Amber eyes narrowed. Breathing changed slightly. Slow. Focused. Watching. "No," Caleb said quietly. "Not again." Ranger lowered his head briefly before suddenly lifting it again toward the gymnasium building. Same direction as earlier. Same strange attention. Caleb stepped out of the truck and opened the passenger door carefully. "Come on." Ranger hesitated before stepping down, body unusually tense beneath thick winter fur. The fundraiser looked harmless enough. Parents carried trays through double doors. Children laughed near snowbanks while volunteers hung paper decorations inside classroom windows. Warm yellow lights spilled from the gymnasium entrance. Entire scene felt ordinary. Yet Ranger stopped halfway through the parking lot. Completely still. One low sound escaped his throat again. Not fear. Not aggression. Warning. Caleb's stomach tightened quietly. "Buddy," he whispered, crouching lower. "Tell me what you were seeing." Ranger stared toward the far side of the school, near maintenance access doors behind the gym. No barking. No pulling. Just staring. Hard enough that Caleb followed his gaze instinctively. A white utility van sat parked there. Unmarked. Probably maintenance. Nothing unusual. Still, something unsettled lingered. Inside the gymnasium, laughter echoed louder now as families gathered around tables filled with desserts and raffle baskets. Caleb forced himself to keep moving. Ranger followed reluctantly beside him, though every few steps the dog glanced back toward the same section of the building. Miss Eleanor spotted Caleb immediately near the entrance. "Well," she smiled warmly. "Look who finally remembered civilization." Caleb managed the smallest smile. "Temporary visit." She bent carefully toward Ranger. "And you must be the famous partner." Ranger barely acknowledged her. Strange again. Usually calm around older people. Instead, his attention stayed somewhere farther inside the building. "Everything okay?" Eleanor asked softly. Caleb hesitated. "Probably." But even he did not sound convinced. The fundraiser moved on around them. Kids played games near folding tables. Parents bid on silent auction items. Teachers poured hot chocolate near the cafeteria entrance. Yet Ranger remained unusually alert through all of it. At one point, a little boy tried petting him near the bleachers. Ranger gently stepped aside, without even looking away from the gymnasium wall. Caleb noticed something else too. The dog seemed most unsettled whenever loud sounds echoed near the maintenance hallway behind the stage. Every single time. Pattern. Too consistent to ignore. Then came the moment everything shifted slightly. A parent near concession tables frowned while watching Ranger stiffen again. Is that the dog from this morning? Another whispered quietly. The one growling near the buses? Caleb pretended not to hear. But whispers spread quickly in small towns. Soon enough, people started glancing sideways again. Nervous looks. Curious looks. Protective parent looks. Ranger let out another low warning sound toward the far side hallway. Quieter than before, but enough. A school volunteer approached politely but carefully. Sir, she said softly. Some parents are feeling uncomfortable. Caleb nodded once. Familiar feeling. Outsider again. We will head out. Before turning toward the exit, he crouched briefly beside Ranger. You are really not letting this go, are you? The German shepherd stood completely still beneath gymnasium lights, ears raised, eyes fixed toward somewhere nobody else seemed willing to notice. Outside, snow began falling harder again across Pine Creek Elementary. And for reasons Caleb could not explain, leaving the school suddenly felt like the wrong thing to do. If you are enjoying this story so far, please remember to like and subscribe so you do not miss more emotional stories like this one. Caleb Foster barely slept that night. Snow tapped softly against cabin windows while cold mountain wind moved through the pine trees outside like the world was trying to whisper something he had not learned how to hear yet. Ranger usually settled near the fireplace after evening walks, sleeping deeply until sunrise with the quiet patience old dogs earned over time. But not tonight. Around midnight, Caleb noticed movement. Slow pacing. Not restless exactly. Intentional. Ranger walked from the living room window to the front door. Then back again, stopping each time to stare toward the distant direction of Pine Creek Elementary, hidden beyond hills and dark roads nearly 4 miles away. Enough, Caleb muttered quietly from his chair. You are making me nervous. Ranger stopped briefly at the sound of his voice, but returned to the same window moments later. Ears raised. Listening. Watching something invisible inside winter darkness. Caleb leaned back slowly and rubbed tired eyes. 8 years together. 8 years trusting instincts sharpened by places nobody liked remembering. Back overseas, Ranger once refused to enter an abandoned building despite orders. Minutes later, structural damage collapsed part of the roof. Another time, the dog refused to approach supply trucks later discovered carrying hazardous fuel leaks. Dogs like Ranger did not overreact. That truth bothered Caleb more than he wanted to admit. By sunrise, snow had stopped. Thin morning light stretched quietly across the mountains while fresh frost covered the cabin porch. Caleb poured black coffee into an old travel mug and stepped outside. Ranger already stood waiting near the truck before Caleb even reached the door. Alert again. Watching. You really want to go back there, Caleb said softly. No hesitation this time. Ranger moved toward the passenger side immediately. Caleb frowned. Fine. The drive into town took nearly 20 minutes through winding roads lined with pine trees and half-frozen creeks. Pine Creek Elementary looked calm beneath pale winter sunlight. Children had not arrived yet. Just staff vehicles scattered across the parking lot and maintenance workers unloading equipment near the gymnasium. Caleb parked near the edge of the football field and stepped out slowly. Ranger moved differently the moment paws touched pavement. Focus sharpened instantly. Nose lifted toward cold air. Then, without hesitation, he began walking toward the rear side of the school. Same direction as yesterday. Same direction every single time. Hold on, Caleb muttered while tightening his jacket against the cold. Near the gymnasium building sat the same white utility van from yesterday evening. Unmarked. Parked beside maintenance access doors. 2 men wearing dark jackets unloaded metal tool cases while speaking quietly near a side entrance. Nothing strange at first glance. Schools always needed repairs. Heating systems. Electrical work. Winter maintenance. Ordinary things. Yet Ranger stopped again roughly 40 feet away. Completely still. Ears forward. Breathing slower now. Focus absolute. Caleb crouched beside him. That van. Ranger barely shifted but lowered his nose toward the ground. One step forward. Then another. Slow. Careful. Not fear. Investigation. Military K-9 behavior. Caleb recognized it instantly. Something clicked quietly inside him. Pattern. This was not random. Yesterday morning. Yesterday evening. Now again before school opened. Same place. Same reaction. Same alertness. Caleb watched the maintenance crew more carefully. One worker stepped inside, carrying equipment, while the other remained near the van, checking something on a clipboard. Harmless enough. Yet Caleb noticed something odd. No school district markings. No contractor logos. Small detail maybe, but strange for a school project. Before he could think much further, Ranger stopped near a fenced utility area behind the gymnasium. Heating units hummed softly through cold air. Pipes. Electrical access. Nothing dramatic. But Ranger suddenly stiffened again. One low warning sound escaped his throat. Quiet, but deliberate. Caleb frowned deeper now. What are you smelling? Ranger lowered his head near the fence line and stood completely motionless. Watching the building. Listening. Like something beneath ordinary sounds felt wrong. A pickup truck rolled into the lot nearby. School staff beginning early arrival. Caleb straightened slowly. Logic fought instinct inside his chest. Maybe old habits made him overthink things. Maybe Ranger simply disliked loud machinery now that age softened patience. Maybe, but maybe not. Before leaving, Caleb snapped a quick photo of the utility van with his phone without fully knowing why. Then something unexpected happened. Ranger suddenly turned toward the school entrance where the first school bus had appeared at the edge of the parking lot. The dog froze completely. Same tension, same warning posture as yesterday morning. Caleb looked from Ranger to the school. Bus doors opened. Children laughing softly while stepping into cold morning air. Ordinary scene again. Perfectly normal. Yet Ranger did not move. Did not blink much either. Only watched. Hard enough to make Caleb uncomfortable in ways he could not explain yet. Because after everything they survived together, one truth still remained impossible for him to ignore. Ranger had never once reacted this strongly without reason. And standing there beneath cold Colorado skies, Caleb suddenly realized something unsettling. He no longer believed the dog was confused. He believed Ranger was trying to tell him something. The only problem was, Caleb still had no idea what. By the fourth morning, Caleb Foster stopped pretending Ranger's behavior meant nothing. Winter sunlight stretched weakly across Pine Creek while thin ice still covered shaded sidewalks and rooftops carried patches of old snow refusing to melt. The town moved through routine with familiar predictability. School buses arrived. Coffee shops opened before sunrise. Parents hurried children through parking lots with backpacks bouncing against heavy coats. Everything looked ordinary again. But ordinary had started feeling unreliable. Ranger stood waiting near the cabin door before Caleb even finished his coffee, alert in a way old age had nearly erased years ago. The German Shepherd had barely slept. Neither had Caleb. You win, Caleb muttered quietly while grabbing his truck keys. One more look. The drive into town happened mostly in silence, except for tires pressing softly through melting slush. Ranger sat unusually upright in the passenger seat, watching roads pass with steady attention. No restless pacing this time. No uncertainty. Purpose. Like he already knew exactly where they needed to go. Pine Creek Elementary appeared again beneath pale skies, quieter now between morning drop-off and lunch. Caleb parked farther back than usual near the football field where nobody paid much attention. Ranger stepped out immediately and moved with surprising focus toward the rear side of campus. Same direction. Same pattern. Past the gymnasium. Toward the fenced maintenance area near heating systems and electrical access panels. Caleb followed more carefully this time. Two utility workers stood near the white van unloading equipment again. Same van. Still no school district logo. Still no contractor name. Strange detail for work happening around children. Ranger stopped near the chain-link fence and lowered his head slightly. His body became still in that old familiar way Caleb remembered from deployments overseas. Controlled. Watching. Waiting. Caleb crouched beside him. What is it? Ranger stared toward the side entrance near the gymnasium basement access. One worker disappeared briefly inside, carrying a long black equipment case. Another remained outside, glancing occasionally toward the parking lot. Something about the rhythm felt wrong somehow. Not dramatic, just slightly off. Like puzzle pieces almost fitting together, but leaving tiny spaces between. Caleb stepped closer toward the school office entrance instead. Better to ask questions before making assumptions. Inside, warmth wrapped around him immediately, along with the distant sound of children laughing through hallways. A secretary smiled politely behind the front desk. "Can I help you?" Caleb hesitated briefly. Sounding paranoid was never pleasant. "I was wondering about the maintenance crew working near the gym." Her expression stayed relaxed. "Heating inspection," she answered. "Annual safety checks before next week's school assembly." Caleb nodded once. Logical enough. Still, something unsettled remained. "Do you know which company?" She typed briefly into her computer. Small pause. Frown. "Actually, I'm not sure. Facilities department arranged it." Before Caleb could ask more, Principal Megan Holloway appeared near the hallway entrance carrying folders. She recognized him immediately from the fundraiser. "Mr. Foster," she said politely though carefully. "Everything okay?" Caleb shifted awkwardly. "Probably." He hated how uncertain he sounded. "My dog keeps reacting around the gym area. I figured I would ask if anything unusual was happening." Principal Holloway blinked slowly. Professional smile. Gentle concern. The kind reserved for difficult conversations. "Your dog from the parking lot." Caleb nodded once. She hesitated. "I appreciate concern, truly. But we have licensed contractors here. Everything has been inspected." Not rude. Just dismissive enough. Familiar feeling. Caleb forced a polite nod. "Understood." She softened slightly. Maybe the noise is upsetting him. Maybe. That word followed Caleb back outside while cold air pressed hard against his face again. Ranger remained near the fence exactly where Caleb left him. Watching. Waiting. One of the workers glanced briefly toward them before looking away too quickly. Caleb noticed another strange thing then. No school maintenance trucks nearby. No visible company identification anywhere. Maybe subcontractors. Maybe temporary workers. Yet Ranger suddenly stiffened harder than before. Ears raised sharply. Breathing slowed. One low warning sound escaped again. Quiet. Serious. Caleb looked toward the gym entrance. Same worker emerged carrying another equipment case. Heavy looking. Too heavy for simple heating inspection maybe. Or maybe Caleb was overthinking again. Years in the military taught people to notice details normal lives ignored. Sometimes useful. Sometimes exhausting. Before leaving, Caleb walked Ranger slowly around the school perimeter. Every time they neared the gymnasium utility side, Ranger reacted. Every single time. Same posture. Same focus. Same warning sound. Pattern confirmed. No randomness left anymore. Later that afternoon, Caleb sat inside Miller's coffee house, staring too long at his untouched cup while snow drifted softly outside windows. Ranger rested near his boots, but remained unusually alert whenever school buses passed nearby. Caleb finally pulled out his phone and looked again at the photo of the white van. Something bothered him enough to zoom closer. Temporary registration sticker. No visible company name. Nothing. Just plain white paint and cold silence behind dark windows. Across the coffee shop, two teachers quietly discussed next week's big school assembly expected to bring nearly every student into the gymnasium at once. Hundreds of children together inside one building. Caleb felt something tighten quietly in his chest. Because Ranger had never once reacted near classrooms. Never near buses alone. Never near playgrounds. Only one place. The gymnasium. And suddenly, for the first time since all of this started, Caleb stopped asking whether Ranger was wrong. Instead, a heavier question settled quietly into the space between fear and instinct. What if the dog was right, and nobody had listened? That evening, the snow finally stopped. Pine Creek settled into one of those strange mountain silences where even ordinary sounds seemed softer somehow, as though winter itself had decided people needed room to think. Caleb Foster sat near the fireplace inside his cabin staring too long at his phone screen, while Ranger rested near the front door. Usually by sunset, the old German shepherd curled into sleep without much effort, age slowing him into routines that felt predictable. But tonight felt different again. Ranger remained awake, ears lifting every few minutes toward distant sounds beyond the windows. Watching, waiting. Caleb leaned back into the couch and glanced once more at the photo of the white utility van. No company name. No district markings. Temporary registration sticker barely visible beneath dirt and road salt. Small detail maybe. Yet military instincts had taught him something uncomfortable years ago. Dangerous situations almost never look dramatic at first. Most trouble arrived disguised as ordinary. A delivery truck. A repair crew. Someone wearing the right uniform. Someone nobody questioned. Maybe I am losing it, Caleb muttered quietly. Ranger lifted his head immediately at the sound of his voice. Calm eyes watching him carefully. Or maybe you were trying to tell me something. The dog stood slowly and crossed the room before stopping near the front door again. Same thing he had done all week. Facing toward town. Toward the school. Caleb exhaled slowly. All right. The next morning arrived colder than expected. Thin frost-covered fences and rooftops while pale sunlight stretched weakly across Pine Creek Elementary. Students had not arrived, yet when Caleb parked near the baseball field once again, Ranger moved faster than usual the moment the truck door opened. Not excited. Focused. Straight toward the rear maintenance area beside the gymnasium. Same route. Same purpose. Caleb followed quietly, keeping distance this time. The white van remained parked near the fenced utility section, though only one worker stood outside now. Dark jacket. Baseball cap pulled low. No logo anywhere. Ranger stopped suddenly about 30 feet away. Nose lifted into cold air. Body rigid. Then something changed. The dog stepped sideways toward the chain-link fence and lowered his head closer to the ground. Breathing deeper now. Searching. Caleb crouched beside him instinctively. Ranger sniffed once. Twice. Then let out a low sound Caleb had not heard in years. Alert recognition. Sharp enough to make memory return instantly. Overseas, Ranger reacted like that near chemical hazards during training exercises. Controlled. Serious. Never random. Caleb's stomach tightened. What are you smelling? Ranger moved closer to the fence, stopping near a utility vent attached to the gymnasium wall. The old dog remained perfectly still. Nose lifted again. Eyes fixed. Caleb stood slowly and studied the area harder now. Pipes. Heating units. Electrical access panels. Ordinary maintenance equipment. Yet something felt off. A faint smell drifted through cold air. Hard to place at first. Metallic maybe. Slightly sharp. Not overwhelming. Just strange enough to notice once he stopped ignoring details. Before Caleb could think further, the worker near the van looked up suddenly. Their eyes met briefly. Small pause. Then the man turned away too quickly and disappeared through a maintenance door, carrying another heavy black case. Caleb frowned. Too many strange details stacking together now. Ranger never reacted near classrooms. Never near buses. Never near playground equipment. Only here. Always here. Near the gymnasium utility systems. A truck pulled into the school lot nearby, forcing Caleb to step back casually before attention drifted toward him. Teachers beginning morning arrivals. Parents soon after. Life moving forward like usual. But something inside Caleb refused to settle anymore. He reached for his phone and searched quickly through county contractor listings for Pine Creek School District. Nothing obvious. No company matching the vehicle description. Could mean nothing. Temporary subcontractor maybe. Yet uncertainty grew heavier by the minute. Around 10 o'clock, Caleb finally walked toward the front office again. Principal Megan Holloway greeted him with visible surprise. Mr. Foster, she said politely. Everything okay? Caleb hesitated carefully this time. Sounding reasonable mattered. I know this might sound strange, he said slowly, but my dog keeps reacting near the gym utility systems. Same spot, every day. Same reaction. Principal Holloway folded her arms gently. Concern mixed with caution. Mr. Foster, we appreciate vigilance. But the building passed inspection recently. Caleb nodded once. I understand. Then quieter. But Ranger was trained to detect things most people miss. Small silence followed. She looked toward the office windows where Ranger waited calmly outside. You really trust him that much? Caleb did not hesitate. With my life. Her expression softened slightly, though uncertainty remained. I can ask facilities for another look, she offered kindly. But there is a large school assembly tomorrow. We cannot create panic over instinct alone. Tomorrow. The word landed harder than expected. Hundreds of children expected inside the gymnasium. Altogether, Caleb stepped outside again into cold air that somehow felt sharper now. Ranger stood exactly where he left him, staring toward the gym. Waiting. Like he already understood time mattered. Caleb crouched beside him quietly. Tomorrow, huh? Ranger looked toward him for the first time all week. Just briefly, then back toward the building. And standing there beneath cold Colorado skies, Caleb suddenly felt something he had not allowed himself to feel in years. Fear. Because after trusting this dog through things most people never survived, one truth had become impossible to ignore. Ranger was not confused. Ranger was warning him. The only question left now was whether anyone would listen before it was too late. Morning arrived colder than expected. The kind of Colorado cold that settled into mountain towns quietly, leaving thin frost along rooftops and turning every breath into pale clouds beneath the sunrise. Pine Creek Elementary stood bright against the winter morning, banners hanging near the entrance for the annual student assembly. Children laughed while parents hurried through the parking lot carrying backpacks, lunchboxes, and forgotten permission slips. Everything looked safe, ordinary, familiar, which somehow made Caleb Foster feel worse. Because fear rarely announced itself loudly. Sometimes danger arrived wearing ordinary clothes and hiding behind routines nobody questioned anymore. Ranger stood unusually still beside the truck before Caleb even opened the passenger door fully. No hesitation this morning. No uncertainty. The old German shepherd stepped down slowly and turned immediately toward the gymnasium. Focused. Calm. Watching. Still the same spot, Caleb muttered quietly. Still trying to tell me something. Around them, school buses lined the drop-off lane, while teachers waved children toward the main entrance. The assembly would begin in less than 45 minutes. Nearly every student in the building expected inside the gymnasium together. Hundreds of children beneath one roof. Caleb tried convincing himself again that he was overthinking things. Maybe Ranger smelled maintenance chemicals. Maybe construction equipment unsettled him. Maybe retirement and age sharpened strange habits nobody understood. Yet none of those explanations felt right anymore. Because Ranger did not behave randomly. Not after 8 years together. Not after deployments, survival, and countless moments where instinct mattered more than comfort. Caleb followed Ranger toward the rear side of the building. Same route again. Past snow-covered dumpsters. Past maintenance fencing. Straight toward the gym utility access doors. But this morning felt different immediately. The white utility van remained parked beside the building, though both workers moved faster than usual. One carried equipment through the maintenance entrance while the other kept checking his watch. No district supervisor nearby. No school maintenance staff. Strange. Ranger stopped hard beside the chain-link fence. Completely still. Then came the sound. Not growling this time. A sharp single bark. Short. Urgent. Caleb froze instantly. Ranger almost never barked without reason. The German shepherd lowered his head near the ventilation units again before stepping sideways toward the same utility vent as yesterday. Nose raised. Breathing changed. Alert recognition. Serious enough to make Caleb's stomach tighten hard. What is it? Caleb whispered. Ranger barked once more, then turned briefly toward Caleb before staring back at the building. Almost impatient now. Like time mattered. Caleb stepped closer toward the maintenance area and noticed something that immediately unsettled him. One access panel near the gym basement remained slightly open despite freezing temperatures. Nearby sat unfamiliar metal canisters stacked near heating equipment. Too many. Too close together. He could not explain why, but instinct moved faster than logic now. Caleb pulled out his phone and dialed the non-emergency police line. Busy signal. School morning traffic overwhelming local dispatch probably. He cursed quietly under his breath. Behind him, children's voices drifted louder through the parking lot. More buses arriving. More students entering the school. Time slipping away. Ranger barked again. Harder this time. Then suddenly the old dog moved. Fast enough to surprise Caleb. Straight toward the front side of the gymnasium entrance where students had already begun gathering for the assembly. Ranger, Caleb called softly, hurrying after him. Near the side entrance, Principal Megan Holloway stepped outside carrying folders while volunteers organized children into lines. She spotted Caleb immediately. Concern crossed her face. Mr. Foster? Caleb barely slowed down. I need you to stop the assembly. Her expression changed instantly. Confusion first. Then caution. Excuse me. Ranger stood rigid beside the gym entrance now, ears raised, staring toward the building with complete focus. One low warning sound escaped his throat again. Caleb took a steady breath. Sound reasonable. Stay calm. I know how this sounds, he said carefully. But Ranger has reacted to this exact area every single day. Same location. Same warning behavior. Something feels wrong. Principal Holloway hesitated. Children continued filing inside behind her. Teachers talking. Parents waving goodbye. Ordinary life moving too fast for fear to catch up. Mr. Foster, she said gently, we cannot stop an entire school assembly because your dog feels uncomfortable. Caleb looked toward Ranger, then back at the principal. Quiet urgency settled deeper into his voice. This dog saved my life more times than I can count. He never reacts like this without reason. Before she could answer, Ranger suddenly barked sharply again and moved closer to the gym wall. Nose toward the ventilation area. Focus absolute now. Several nearby teachers paused nervously. Parents glanced over. The moment stretched strangely quiet beneath cold mountain air. Caleb swallowed hard, because something inside him had already made the decision before logic could argue anymore. If he stayed silent and Ranger was right, he would never forgive himself. And standing there outside Pine Creek Elementary, while hundreds of children gathered inside, Caleb Foster realized he was seconds away from making a choice that could either make him look completely unreasonable or save lives nobody yet knew were at risk. The cold seemed sharper after that moment. Pine Creek Elementary continued moving like any normal school morning, while Caleb Foster stood near the gymnasium entrance feeling the weight of something invisible pressing harder against his chest. Children laughed nearby without understanding the tension building around them. Teachers carried clipboards through open doors. Volunteers taped signs to walls announcing the winter assembly. Everything looked harmless. Yet Ranger had stopped moving completely. The old German shepherd stood rigid beside the gym wall, amber eyes fixed toward the utility ventilation system like nothing else in the world existed anymore. Principal Megan Holloway folded her arms against the cold. Concern still lingered in her expression, but now uncertainty had started creeping in too. Ranger's behavior was difficult to ignore. Mr. Foster, she said carefully, what exactly are you asking me to do? Caleb took a slow breath. Years in the military had taught him one painful truth. Calm mattered when fear arrived. I want you to delay the assembly, he said quietly. 10 minutes. 15 if possible. Just long enough to check the utility systems near the gym. Behind them, another wave of students entered through the front doors carrying winter jackets and excitement. Hundreds of voices echoed faintly through hallways. Principal Holloway hesitated. You understand how serious this sounds. I do, Caleb answered. And I understand how unreasonable it sounds too. He glanced toward Ranger again. But this dog has never reacted like this without reason. The principal looked toward Ranger. The German shepherd stood perfectly still, ears raised, body tense with complete focus. No barking now. No pacing. Just waiting. Then something shifted. Ranger suddenly stepped closer toward the side ventilation unit and let out one sharp bark before backing away immediately. Short. Urgent. Different. Caleb felt his stomach drop. Ranger, he whispered softly. The dog turned briefly toward him, breathing slower but heavier now. Focus unchanged. Principal Holloway frowned harder. I will call facilities, she said finally, pulling out her phone. But I cannot stop everything without evidence. Before she finished speaking, a school janitor stepped through the side maintenance door looking uneasy. Ma'am, he called out. Something smells strange inside, near the lower utility hallway. Caleb's eyes moved instantly toward Ranger. The dog had already lowered his head again, watching the gymnasium entrance with complete intensity. Principal Holloway paused. What kind of smell? Hard to explain, the janitor answered. Sharp maybe, like something mechanical. We thought maintenance was handling it. Caleb felt cold settle deeper into his chest. The contractors, he asked quickly. Where are they? The janitor blinked. What contractors? Silence landed hard between them. Principal Holloway frowned immediately. The heating crew, she said. The workers here all week. The janitor looked confused. We have not had scheduled maintenance this week. Everything inside, Caleb tightened at once. Ranger barked again. Harder now. Urgent enough that nearby teachers stopped walking. Students turned briefly toward the noise before continuing inside. Caleb looked toward the parking area near the gym. The white van. Gone. Empty space where it had been parked only minutes earlier. We need to clear the gym, Caleb said quietly but firmly. Principal Holloway hesitated only a second this time. Fear had finally reached her eyes too. Are you serious? Caleb nodded once. Very. Ranger moved suddenly toward the side entrance, then stopped and barked sharply again before stepping backward, almost refusing to go closer. That alone told Caleb enough. Ranger never hesitated without reason. Principal Holloway turned immediately toward staff near the entrance. Stop the assembly, she called out. Move students outside to the football field. Calmly. Confusion spread instantly. Teachers exchanged uncertain looks. Parents asked questions. Children complained about standing outside in the cold. Yet the staff moved quickly enough once urgency spread through voices instead of explanations. Snow crunched beneath hundreds of small boots as students lined up outside, near the football field wrapped in winter jackets and confusion. Some thought it was a surprise drill. Others laughed. Nobody understood how close fear had come to arriving quietly. 10 minutes later, county emergency responders arrived after Principal Holloway placed a full precautionary call. Caleb stood beside Ranger near the edge of the parking lot while specialists checked the gym utility systems. Wind moved softly across the football field while teachers tried keeping children distracted with songs and games. Ranger finally sat beside Caleb for the first time all morning, though his eyes never left the building. Then came the moment nobody forgot. A county official walked quickly toward Principal Holloway, speaking in a voice too low for students to hear. But Caleb saw her face change immediately. Pale, quiet, hand over mouth. Something serious had been found near the utility system beneath the gymnasium, involving hazardous mechanical equipment and unsafe materials improperly connected to ventilation lines. No disaster happened. No dramatic moment. Just something dangerous discovered early enough because one old dog refused to stop warning the only person willing to listen. Around the football field, children continued laughing beneath cold Colorado skies, completely unaware that ordinary life had quietly shifted around them. Caleb looked down at Ranger and rested one hand gently against thick fur. You knew, he whispered softly. Ranger leaned slightly closer but stayed quiet. Just watching. Like heroes sometimes did not need applause to understand what mattered. And standing there while snow drifted softly across Pine Creek Elementary, Caleb suddenly realized something even harder to understand than fear itself. Nobody had believed the dog, until the dog quietly saved every child in the school. By the next morning, Pine Creek no longer felt like the same town. News traveled quickly in mountain communities where people usually measured time through weather, school schedules, and familiar faces. But now every conversation somehow circled back to one thing. The old German shepherd nobody trusted had quietly become the reason hundreds of children went home safely. Snow melted slowly beneath brighter skies, while parents gathered outside coffee shops, speaking softer than usual. Teachers stood longer in parking lots before heading inside school doors. Even the air around Pine Creek Elementary felt different somehow, quieter in ways difficult to explain. Caleb Foster noticed the change immediately. He parked outside Miller's Coffee House just after sunrise, while Ranger climbed slowly from the truck beside him. Normally people nodded politely at best. Small-town kindness mixed with respectful distance. Caleb had grown used to invisibility. Easier that way. Less explaining. Less remembering. But this morning felt unfamiliar. A woman near the entrance paused while holding coffee in one hand and her young son's backpack in the other. You are him, she said softly. Caleb frowned slightly. Ma'am. Her eyes shifted toward Ranger. Suddenly emotional. My daughter was inside the gym yesterday. Small silence followed. Then quieter. Thank you. Before Caleb could answer, the little boy stepped carefully toward Ranger, holding something folded awkwardly in mitten-covered hands. Construction paper. Crayons. Child handwriting. He held it out shyly. For your dog. Caleb crouched slowly to accept it. A drawing filled the paper. Ranger standing beside smiling stick-figure children beneath uneven snowflakes. Across the top in bright blue letters read, Thank you, Ranger. Caleb swallowed harder than expected. That is really nice, he said quietly. Ranger sat beside him, calm as ever, though his tail moved once against the frozen sidewalk. Inside the coffee shop, conversations softened when Caleb entered. Not uncomfortable silence this time. Respectful silence. Familiar faces nodded. Someone paid quietly for his coffee before he reached the register. Miss Eleanor Briggs smiled warmly from her usual table near the windows. Told you this town notices kindness eventually, she said softly. Caleb looked uncomfortable. Ranger did the hard part. Eleanor smiled knowingly. Sometimes somebody still has to listen. Across town, Pine Creek Elementary reopened carefully under temporary safety inspections while repairs continued near the gym utility systems. Officials explained the issue as a dangerous mechanical hazard involving improperly installed materials near ventilation systems. Serious enough to require immediate closure of the assembly area. Quiet enough to avoid frightening children with details they did not need carrying around. Nobody fully understood how Ranger detected it. But nobody argued anymore either. Around lunchtime, Principal Megan Holloway called Caleb personally. "We would like you to stop by," she said gently. "If that feels okay." Caleb hesitated. Crowds still felt difficult after years alone. But when he looked toward Ranger resting near the fireplace, something inside him softened. "All right," he said quietly. That afternoon, sunlight reflected softly against snowbanks outside the school parking lot while children lined sidewalks waiting near recess areas. The moment Ranger stepped from the truck, something unexpected happened. Instead of nervous stares or whispered concern, small voices suddenly erupted across the playground. "That is him. Ranger is here. The hero dog." Caleb froze slightly while Ranger stood quietly beside him, completely unaware of whatever title children had already decided belonged to him. A little girl wearing a bright purple coat stepped forward first, holding a handmade thank you card. "My mom said you saved us," she whispered toward Ranger before gently petting thick fur near his shoulder. Others followed carefully. Small hands, gentle voices, nervous smiles turning into excitement. Ranger remained calm through all of it, patient in the way older dogs often became after surviving enough difficult years. Principal Holloway met Caleb near the school entrance, expression softer than before. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly. "I should have listened sooner." Caleb shook his head lightly. "You were protecting the school." She glanced toward Ranger surrounded by children. "Looks like he protected all of us." Something about hearing that settled strangely inside Caleb's chest. Or maybe, unfamiliar. For years after leaving the military, loneliness became easier than belonging anywhere. Ranger had been enough. Quiet cabin, snowy mornings, no expectations. Yet watching children laugh around the old German shepherd somehow cracked something open he thought life had already closed for good. But later that evening, after town finally quieted again and sunset stretched orange light across frozen hills, Caleb noticed something troubling. Ranger climbed slowly from the truck, slower than usual, stiff, tired enough to hesitate before stepping onto the porch. Inside the cabin, the old German shepherd settled near the fireplace without touching dinner. Strange for him. Caleb crouched nearby quietly. "Buddy." Ranger lifted tired eyes briefly before lowering his head back onto worn blankets. Exhaustion settled deeper into his face somehow. Older suddenly. Caleb rested one hand gently against thick fur and frowned toward the fading mountain light outside. Because for the first time since everything changed, a quieter fear arrived. What if saving everyone had cost Ranger more than anybody realized? The cabin stayed unusually quiet that night. Wind moved softly through the pine trees surrounding Caleb Foster's property, while fading winter light disappeared slowly behind Colorado mountains. Usually evenings followed familiar rhythms. Ranger ate dinner near the fireplace. Caleb drank coffee that lasted too long, while old country radio drifted softly through the room. Peace had become predictable after enough lonely years. But tonight, worry sat heavier than silence. Ranger barely touched food. The old German shepherd remained stretched across his blanket near the fire, breathing slower than usual, tired eyes following Caleb quietly whenever he moved through the room. "You scared me today," Caleb said softly while kneeling beside him. Ranger lifted his head slightly before resting it back down against worn blankets. Caleb ran one hand gently through thick black and tan fur. Age showed more clearly now, gray beginning around the muzzle, slower movements, small stiffness in joints after cold mornings. Easy things to ignore until fear reminded people time moved quietly even when they wished it would slow down. The next morning arrived brighter than expected. Snow melted from rooftops while sunlight stretched farther across town than it had in weeks. Caleb called Dr. Melissa Grant before breakfast. Ranger deserved checking after everything. "Bring him in," she said kindly over the phone. "And Caleb?" Everybody here has heard about yesterday. Caleb sighed quietly. Small towns. News traveled faster than weather. The veterinary clinic smelled faintly of cedar cleaner and coffee when they arrived. Ranger walked slower than usual through the front doors, but still lifted his head politely when receptionists smiled at him. One had taped a handmade paper sign near the desk. Thank you, Ranger. Child handwriting again. Crayon drawings of school buses and paw prints. Caleb paused longer than expected staring at it. Strange feeling. Pride maybe. Mixed with sadness. Because heroes got older too. Dr. Grant finished the examination carefully while Ranger stayed unusually patient on the padded table. After several quiet minutes, she smiled gently. He is exhausted, she admitted. But honestly, better than I expected for an 8-year-old working dog. Caleb frowned slightly. Nothing serious? Arthritis. Fatigue. Old injuries reminding everybody they still exist. She smiled softly. But he is okay. Relief settled through Caleb harder than expected. You sure? I am sure. Then quieter. Though I think he gave more of himself yesterday than people realize. Caleb looked toward Ranger resting calmly beside him. Sounds familiar. Dr. Grant smiled knowingly. Maybe that is why you two understand each other. A few days later, Pine Creek Elementary reopened the gymnasium after repairs and inspections finally ended. The dangerous utility problem had been fixed completely. Official explanations stayed simple. A hazardous mechanical issue caught early enough to prevent serious consequences. Quiet miracle. Quiet timing. Yet around town, everybody already knew who people thanked most. On Friday afternoon, Principal Megan Holloway called again asking if Caleb and Ranger would stop by after school. Nothing formal, she promised. Just something small. Caleb almost declined. Attention still felt uncomfortable. But when he looked toward Ranger resting by the porch beneath afternoon sunlight, something softer settled inside him. Maybe disappearing forever had never healed anything. The school playground looked brighter somehow when they arrived. Snow mostly gone now except shaded corners near fences. Children waited near the front lawn carrying handmade signs while teachers stood nearby, pretending not to look emotional. The moment Ranger stepped from the truck, cheers erupted across the playground loud enough to startle birds from nearby trees. Ranger, children shouted. Hero dog. Caleb looked genuinely uncomfortable, while Ranger simply stood there blinking slowly like he did not understand excitement belonged to him. Near the front entrance stood something unexpected. A small wooden bench beside fresh flower planters near the playground fence. Newly painted. Simple. Quiet. A bronze plaque attached carefully beneath morning sunlight. Principal Holloway smiled gently. We thought this belonged here. Caleb stepped closer. The plaque read, Ranger's Corner. For the dog who watched over Pine Creek's children. Small silence settled over everyone. Ranger walked slowly toward the bench and sat beside it without instruction. Calm. Quiet. Like somehow even he understood this place belonged to children now. One little girl in a red winter coat stepped closer, holding folded paper carefully. I made this for him, she whispered. Crayon drawing again. Ranger surrounded by smiling stick figure children beneath bright sunshine. Caleb crouched quietly beside her. He will like that, he said softly. The little girl smiled. Do heroes get old? She asked suddenly. Caleb glanced toward Ranger resting peacefully beside the bench. Sunlight warming tired fur. Calm eyes half closed while children laughed nearby. He smiled softly. Yeah, he answered. But that does not make them less brave. Later that evening, back at the cabin, Ranger settled beside the porch watching sunsets stretch gold across distant mountains. Somewhere far away, faint sounds of children playing drifted through the cold air carried from town. Caleb sat beside him with coffee cooling slowly between his hands. No loneliness tonight. Not completely. Not anymore. You know, he said quietly, resting one hand gently against Ranger's shoulder. Turns out staying matters. Ranger leaned closer without lifting his head. Same quiet trust. Same loyalty that survived years, distance, and silence. Wind moved softly through the pine trees, while fading sunlight touched the mountains one last time. Funny thing about healing was how quietly it arrived sometimes. Not through grand moments. Not through speeches. Sometimes healing arrived on 4 tired legs carrying more courage than anybody expected. And somewhere beneath the quiet Colorado sky, one old soldier and one aging dog finally stopped feeling forgotten.